Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Decades with Joe E. Kramer.
It's 9 o'clock.
Hey everybody, this is Ivan from Men Without Hats. Hi everyone, this is Russell Hitchcock of Air Supply.
I'm all out of love. I'm so lost without you. I know you were right, believing for so long.
Hey everybody, it's Robert Mason from War.
Heaven isn't too far away. Love so do it every day.
And you're listening to Decades. You're listening to Decades. Let's all hang out with Joey Kramer on Decades.
This is the Decades Artist Spotlight. Now, here's Joe E. Kramer with this week's artist.
We are on a Decades Artist Spotlight. We're going to welcome back to the show. He was here a few years ago, Mr. John Parr. I think we best know him for one of the biggest songs of the 1980s with St. Elmo's Fire, which we're obviously going to kick it off with right now. And then we'll be talking to John Parr, the Decades Artist Spotlight. Don't go anywhere. It's a good one.
Growing up, you don't see the writing on the wall. Passing by, moving straight ahead, you knew it all. But maybe sometime if you feel the pain, you'll find you're all alone. Everything has changed. Play the game. You know you can quit until it's won. Soldier on. Only you can do what must be done. You know it's some way you're not like me. You're just a prisoner, and you're trying to break free. I can see a new horizon underneath the blazing sky. I'll be where the eagles flying higher and higher. Gonna be a man in motion. All I need is a pair of wheels. Take me where my future's lying. Sing down those fire. Burning up. Don't know just how far that I can go. Soon be home. Only just a few miles down the road. I can make it. I know I can. You broke a boy in me, but you won't break the man. I can see a new horizon underneath the blazing sky. I'll be where the eagles flying higher and higher. Gonna be a man in motion. All I need is a pair of wheels. Take me where my future's lying. Send down those fire. I can climb the highest mountain, cross the wildest sea. I can feel St. Elmo's fire burning in me, burning in me.
is the Decades Artist Spotlight with Joe E. Kramer. This week's artist.
We are on another Decades Artist Spotlight, and tonight, back on the show, singer-songwriter and musician, the one, the only, Mr. John Parr. How you doing, John?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and every artist has a story, and yours took a while to develop, but I want to start off by just asking you, the beginning and how you got to, because you didn't really hit it big until you were in your 30s.
No, and yet I started as a little boy. I was playing for money from 12, doing the clubs and pubs, and 20 years of it till I broke through.
And did you ever think at any time, hey, you know what, this is enough, I'm going to get a real job? Or did anybody tell you it's time for you to get a real job?
When the band's truck blew up for the very last time, it was beginning of late 70s, my dad said, maybe it's time you should think about getting a proper job. But my sons now, they're grown up. They said, I don't think Granddad meant that. I think what he meant was he was just going to give me another kind of kick up the backside.
Did you ever think about it? Did you ever say, hey, this isn't working out? What am I going to do? I'm 30 years old. Am I going to be able to make it big?
I'll tell you a true story. I remember buying Toto 4 with Rosanna and Africa on there.
Right.
And I can remember sitting on my lounge carpet crying, thinking, I can't compete with this. This is just too much. And a year later, I was on the road with them, and they were friends of mine, and then they later played on my record. So never give up.
And you actually hooked up with Meatloaf, and Meatloaf actually took you, and you were living with him in Connecticut. Is that true?
True, absolutely true. Yeah, it was simultaneously. The break came with him and my manager also simultaneously in New York trying to get a deal with Atlantic, and both those things came off at once. After all those years, two things hit. And
here you are. You're 30. How old were you when you? I'm talking right before Naughty Naughty hit. You were how old at that time?
I was 32 when Naughty Naughty hit, yeah.
And Naughty Naughty became a big success. Now, was that a surprise how big it became?
For me, it was a big fight. It was my first single, and Atlantic wanted to release the song I'd written with Meatloaf called Magical.
Right.
And I fought them tooth and nail. I just believed in Naughty Naughty. I thought it was going to be the one. And so when they let it out, they didn't really get behind it. But it kind of was in the Christmas period. It was like in the 80s. It was crazy. Everybody was triple bonusing, getting their songs on the radio, and Naughty Naughty was just kind of under its own steam.
And it was the age of the music video, and I always remember I was, 13 years old at the time, so I was glued in front of MTV, 24 hours a day. MTV played music. I always tell my daughters that, yes, at one time there wasn't reality shows on MTV, and as a teenager, we were all glued to this thing because now we were actually seeing the people that sang our favorite songs. And what stuck out there for me, and I remember my father was sitting with me, he thought, these videos, but then he saw that car you were driving, which was incredible.
Yeah, it was, both cars. There was the Rolls-Royce Corniche.
Right, that's the one.
I think it was the 65 Mustang as well.
Now, whose cars were they?
Just renters. They were just renters. I've always, in all my videos, I've usually had the best-looking girls I can get and the best-looking cars.
Now, the girl in the video, she was somebody, too. Off the top of my head, I can't remember her name. But the girl in the...
Renna. Forgotten. My wife would tell me.
Lisa Renna. Lisa Renna.
Lisa Renna, yeah. She's on Housewives of the Beverly Hills, yeah.
And she was, Melrose Place. She
was really... coming from England, I got no idea who she was. And they literally, the video company just cast her for me.
And you're talking about, you were saying, sitting there looking at the Toto record and thinking you're never going to make this. Then, not too long after, you also had an experience with Roger Daltrey of the Who.
Yeah, that was incredible. My manager had been with the Who for 30 years. He was actually Keith Moon's driver originally. And he was the tour manager. And when the Who split up, he was looking for something new. And he went to the publishers, and they gave him my cassette with the songs on it. And we met, and the Who had just split for the first time, and he started pushing. pushing me. But on all those flights, crossing the Atlantic, he would tell me all the stories about Keith.
Right.
And so I was kind of best placed to write about him, I think, other than Pete. So I wrote Under a Raging Moon with my friend as, the story of The Who at Woodstock.
And that became his biggest song here, his biggest solo song, Roger Daltrey.
Incredible. Funny, we were just talking about it today that The Who were going to play it at Live Aid, and Pete didn't want to do it. And both Roger recorded it later, and as did John Entwistle. They both actually recorded it.
And you did that song with him, I think it was at Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, we did it as a duet at Madison Square Garden. That was just off the scale, I mean, everybody was there that night. It was just... And for me, a kid from England, Madison Square Garden meant the Muhammad Ali fights. I used to get up in the middle of the night with my dad and watch the fights from the garden. And so to play there, was just awesome.
And the other thing, people remember the Monkees, okay? Big 60s, sure. 70s. You also did stuff with, I don't know if people might not remember, the New Monkees, a song called Do It Again.
Yeah, it's really full circle. When we were kids, like you say, starting out when we were 12 years old, we used to watch, the Monkey Show used to be on at 5 o'clock on UK time on a Saturday night. We used to watch the Monkees, and then the taxi would come at 6. We'd load the gear in a big old Cadillac taxi in England and go and play, and we'd pretend we were the Monkees. It's funny, isn't it, our life?
And there's always a push every year for the Monkees getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They weren't one of the nominees this year, but people make fun of them. But there was talent in that group. I came on the Monkees late. I was again in the '80s. MTV started showing the Monkees in the mid '80s, so they became this big thing. I ended up going back and buying all their albums. So they had a big resurgence coming into the 1980s.
I just have great memories of them, and like you can close your eyes and you can still kind of see those kind of vignettes of all the stuff they got up to, and you can hear that song playing it in your head, can't you? It's just imprinted.
It was. Their songs were catchy, and people don't realize there was a time in the 60s that the Monkees were actually bigger than the Beatles.
Absolutely. Well, they were kind of the American Beatles for a while.
Were they? They absolutely were. And you worked with the New Monkees. Never really got off the ground, but you got to. Now, did you actually meet some of you? I heard that you met Mickey Dolenz, right?
Yes, I met Mickey very briefly. Yeah, but again, Mickey was when I was a little kid, he was in Circus Boy, so I remembered him right back from being Corky in Circus Boy.
And people always talk about that group and say they had talent. Davy Jones was a childhood star, and of course the teen idol. Michael Nesmith was he was a pure musician. Peter Tork also was a big musician, and Mickey Dolenz was a TV star. So they meshed them all together. And I don't know if something like that could be replicated today.
No, and it's interesting, that as you were reading the names, I those names are in my mind, and they're only the supergroups that you remember the members of.
Right. And it's unfortunate. Every day we seem to lose somebody.
Well, it's kind of my era, unfortunately. It's like I'm a kid of the 50s. And I was thinking about it again today. I was going to do a show with Ginger Baker earlier this year, and I couldn't do it. It was a Drum Legends show, and I so wish I'd have done it, because they, bands like Cream were so kind of influential on me.
I know. I see it every day. Growing up with these artists, you felt like you knew them when they were out. Now I get to talk to a lot of them, and I know Eddie Money just passed away a little bit ago, and I had him on my show so many times. And It was like losing a member of the family when I woke up that morning and found out that he passed, because he was on my show a few times, and again, another one gone from my era, the guys that I grew up with.
What's going to happen, unfortunately in the next 10 years, that golden era will be gone. I know.
It rips my heart out, because it seems like it was just yesterday when all these guys were, on MTV, and now one by one, we all do the same thing. We live and we die, and unfortunately, that's what happens.
We do. I suppose the legacy lives on. The beauty of a lot of those great records is you hear them on the radio now, and they still sound fresh and electric, and it's captured them in their prime, hasn't it?
And that's the beauty of the music. And I say this about the '80s because when the songs lived on, and a lot of the music today, I don't know if it'll still be being played on the radio in 25, 30 years from now.
It's difficult. It's such a difficult thing to say. I can be very cynical about things, and then every now and again I hear this great song and a great performance, and I think, but usually those people are inspired by the greats.
They are.
And that means they're competing with them. That's what I did. They set the bar, and I tried to jump as high as they did. I maybe didn't get over it, but I was reaching for it.
Well, let's talk about the big one here. 35th anniversary is going to be coming up next year in 2020 for St. Elmo's Fire.
Yeah.
I mean, is that incredible? 35 years ago, you put that song out.
It is incredible, and I think we were talking the other day that maybe 10 years ago the song was kind of occasionally you heard it on the radio, but these days in England and I guess in America too.
Yeah, absolutely.
The song is there on the radio.
Now I'm more for I like on my show in particular. I like playing some of the songs that I guess you don't hear a lot because everybody hears St. Elmo's Fire all the time. I mean, it's always a song that, and I'll get to it with your album that came out in 2012, but I like playing the songs like Magical, and I played Love Grammar, I played Restless Heart, I played songs like this on my show. But
good on you, man.
But 35th anniversary of St. Elmo's Fire, this is a song, and I read something interesting that your friend Richard Marx is going to sing on, and instead Richard Page of Mr. Mister actually sang on the song with you.
Yeah, I always say to Richard, can you imagine what your career would have been like if you'd have sang on my record? Yeah, Richard used to work, he was like the go-to singer for David Foster, who wrote Elmo's with me.
Right.
And before Richard made it, that was his thing. He was a session guy, and I guess as Richard Page was. And it was literally Richard's day off, and the other Richard Page, came in that day and nailed it.
And you had talking about Toto, Steve Lukather was on the song. David Amato from REO Speedwagon, he did
Absolutely.
So it was like an all-star cast playing on this song.
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing because Jeff Porcaro played on the Meatloaf song "Don't Leave Your Mark on Me" as well. So yeah, full circle. But like you say, St. Elmo's was that kind of unique experience. Not just in the writing, the recording, is watching all those great guys come in and just nail it instantly.
I put my hand on your stocking. I was moving nice and slow. Let my fingers do the walking. And it ain't far to go. Don't tell me I don't wanna be a girl like that. Do you wanna see a grown man cry?
week's Decades Artist Spotlight continues. Now, here's Joe E. Kramer with this week's artist.
This week's artist is John Parr. You've heard the first part. You've heard Saint Elmo's Fire. You've heard Naughty Naughty, but there's more to come. So don't go anywhere. We're going to continue our conversation with John Parr. Coming up in just after a short break, less than 1 minute. Don't go anywhere. This is Decades Around the World. Decades with JoeEKramer.com. The radio bold app for your iPhone or Android device. You can also get us on the Amazon Alexa. Everywhere. No excuse. And, of course, right here on the radio, on the River 105 and 103.5. More with John Parr coming up next.
This is the Decades Artist Spotlight.
Northeast PA's The River.
Heading down this Zion road, these 6 strings on my back. Must be 20 years or more since this train rode down the track. Sometimes I hear the whistle blowing, conductor shouting all aboard. But I'm rusting in the stockyard, said that's all I was good for. I dream I'm heading down this Zion road, dream I'm heading back. I'm building up a head of steam, burning up the track. I see her waving from her window, I'm smiling, waving back. And I don't feel so alone, I'm coming home. And it feels like the first time I'm coming home. See the world in a new light. Stuck here in this tunnel, no light at the other end. No one knows I'm down here, yearning for a friend. And I hear that whistle blowing in the shadows of my mind. And I know it's her who's calling, waiting on the other side. Now I don't feel so alone, I'm coming home. And it feels like the first time I'm coming home. This old world in a new light, I'm coming home. Coming home for the last time, I'm coming home. It feels like the first time. Smoking up the embers, I can see the fire rise. Yeah, the flames are burning, lighting memories in your eyes. All I'm asking from you is a second chance. I'm coming home.
Artist Spotlight.
This week's Decades Artist Spotlight continues. Now, here's Joe E. Kramer with this week's artist.
We're in a Decades Artist Spotlight. John Parr, you just heard Coming Home. That was from his 2012 album, The Mission. Almost, we're gonna talk about it in a few minutes, so keep listening. Let's get back to our Decades Artist Spotlight with Mr. John Parr. 40 million streams I saw on your websites on Spotify. I mean, a lot more when you put all the streaming together. I know on radio, it's one of the biggest songs in America. It's one of the has, how do I say this? Don't Stop Believin' is the most played song in the history of radio in America. Yeah. And Saint Elmo's Fire is in the top 10. So It's still getting all these airplays, all these, which I think is incredible. Even on YouTube, your videos, I mean, 20 million, if you add them all up together, of people still watching that video, which has to feel great.
It feels great. I'll tell you what feels really great. It's that vindication. Obviously, St. Elmo was written not for the movie. It was written about a guy trying to go around the world in a wheelchair.
And that was Rick Hansen, right?
Emotion.
Rick Hansen or Rich Hansen?
Rick Hansen.
Rick Hansen.
Yeah, Rick Hansen. And so when David Foster, when we literally wrote the song wrote it and recorded it in 2 days. And it went in the movie. We did it over a weekend. It went in the movie on the Monday. And David said I would never get that lyric past the movie company, because it's entirely about Rick.
Right.
But I was careful, so every line, it seems like it's, the pair of wheels is Demi Moore's Jeep. For once in his life, a man has his time. They think it's when Emilio gets the girl, when really it's entirely about Rick pushing a wheelchair up mountains and across deserts.
How did that song change your life? Because it had to be, when you get that, and when you get a number one song, all over the world, how did it change your life?
It was like the full circle. My parents lived long enough to see. I always used to say, it's not if I make it, it's when I make it. And they lived long enough to see that I did, and with, like you say, with a song that really did have, foundation and credibility, and the years have proved it to be so.
And I look
it's wonderful.
The song when that song particularly was a hit in 20-some countries. It went top 10 in half of those countries. So it's incredible when you have a song all over the world and it's still being played to this day. So that's a tribute to you and David on writing such an epic song.
Thank you so much, man. I mean, it's like you say as well, and it's like I have like a thing on my wall in my studio, and it shows me the Billboard Top 100 when St. Elmo was at the top. And if you look at that 100, nearly every act is a platinum, multi-platinum.
Absolutely.
And so I was competing with the best of the best, and it was my, like you say, my day in the sun.
And a lot of TV came out of that. I remember you being on American Bandstand with Dick Clark, which had to be great.
I did. I think I broke a record on that show because Dick used to have people on twice a year.
Right.
I did it 4 times.
I remember.
In 85. And Dick was such a great man, and so supportive of me. And just, I can imagine I was a guy that didn't know of Dick, really. I was a kid from England. And so when I look back at all those shows from 20 years earlier that he did, I mean, he still had that enthusiasm.
And your big show was Top of the Pops in England, right? That was like
That was our American Bandstand.
Right.
Yeah, that was the dream show to be on.
And you were on that too, correct?
I was on it, and again, there's nothing like doing it in your own country, is there? To me, that was like I'd grown up as a little boy watching that show all my, childhood into my adult life, and to get on there, it's like playing Carnegie Hall,
And talking about movies and TV shows, I just noticed that you did a song for Three Men and a Little Lady. The minute I saw you, which has just recently been released for streaming. Talk a little bit about that song.
Yeah, 3 Men and a Baby, the original.
3 Men and a Baby. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was. That was such a frustrating time. We wrote the song, and it was with Leonard Nimoy was the director of the movie. The song was written with Marvin Hamlish, Carol Bayer Sager, and David Foster, and all the stars seemed in alignment. But unfortunately, my record label they wouldn't release it. They just wouldn't release it. And obviously, the movie became the biggest movie of that year globally. And there was me with the title track, and you couldn't buy it. And so it kind of just faded away, and then Disney just, I don't know whether they're going to make another movie or what, but they called me and said, you know, do you have a copy of it? They didn't even have a copy of and it was going backwards and forwards, getting remixed this year, and eventually it's done, and it's all shiny and new again.
And after all these years, there was no way for you to ever get it streamed because I guess they own the rights, or what was the holdup with Disney?
Well, also, it didn't exist as a stereo. It was only ever a 5.1. For your listeners out there, when you go to the movie theaters, you're listening in 5.1 or Dolby Atmos. So I only had a cassette. When we mixed the song, we did it 5.1, and I just took a quick stereo mix onto a cassette then in those days. So I was the only person in the world that had a stereo, but it was on cassette, so it could never be good enough quality. So when Disney re-released it this year, they had to get my cassette to match the mix.
Wow. And Disney, of course, owns everything. So if anybody's
Disney owns everything.
They own out. If you're ever in doubt about it, something being owned, just say, "Hey, it's probably Disney," because they own just about everything in the world at this point. You know, I talked a little bit. Just a few more questions here. I was looking back at songs that I play by you. Obviously, I play more than just "Saint Almost Fire," and one of my favorite albums by you is "The Mission," which came out in 2012. Two songs in particular.
God bless you, man.
Two songs in there, which I play a lot, especially around this time of the year with Veterans Day and Memorial Day and all this stuff. "Soldier's Wife" and "Coming Home." "Coming Home" I play a lot. And two phenomenal songs. Talk a little bit about that album, because that's an album that I imagine, you know, it's almost like a military album, and it touched a lot of people.
When I was really making it big in America in the mid-'80s, we'd just come out of a war in England. We had the Falklands War.
Okay.
And so we lost a lot of troops. I came to America in the mid-'80s, and for people who listened to radio, if they were around then, you didn't really like your forces. You know, the military were told not to wear their uniforms in the street.
Right.
People would spit on. It was a really bad time. And for me as a Brit coming, I just couldn't believe it. And I thought, man, I would just love to, you know, write music about these boys and girls and their families that have put it all on the line, you know, for us. And things happened in my life that stopped me doing it. And so when I was able to kind of come back to America, unfortunately, I was 20 years in a court case, so I couldn't work. So I got free in 2010 on my court case.
It seems like every artist from the 80s was caught up in court with something.
Yeah, man. So I came back to America in 2011 with The Mission, which was entirely about what it's like to be a soldier, the wife of a soldier, the father, the brother, the sister, because they go to war too with their loved ones. You know, it's in their imagination, and it's sometimes worse than the real thing. And so that's what The Mission is entirely about. And like you say, Soldier's Wife is you know, a very special song to me. It literally is about, you know, she knows her man's going to war and he may not come back, and he's packing his bag to go, and she's pretending to be asleep because she can't speak, she can't face him. So, yeah, and then, like you say,
the last track is Coming Home.
Coming Home.
Right.
Coming Home is the strangest thing. I wrote Coming Home not as a military song at all. I just wrote a song about me coming back. So it was my story. And I felt like I was this old train in the scrapyard, and they were just about to melt me down for scrap. And then something happens, and I'm back on the track again. And so it was all about me coming back. And then the light went on in my head, and I thought, man, this is entirely about what it's like when you, not just in the military, but everybody coming home, especially this time of year, you know, people coming home. And it's that indescribable feeling, isn't it, that words can't express. And so that's what Coming Home was trying to do.
And it seemed like, and I don't know if this was your thought process, but when you listen to that album from beginning to end, it's almost sort of like a concept album in the way that it takes you from before enlisting to enlistment to saying goodbye to the wife, to you know, the actual battles, whatever, and then wrapping it up with, you know, you're finally coming home.
Do you know, that's amazing you said that. That never occurred to me. What occurs to me with records, all my albums, it's about like a show. That the album, we don't think about it as much in albums these days, but in those days, vinyl going into CD, it was about, taking people on this kind of trip through all those songs. So that's what I was doing with The Mission, and it hadn't occurred to me that Coming Home, being on the back, was the rounding of the circle. So well spotted.
Yeah, it was.
And you've learned me something.
It was like a full circle. So what's next for John Parr? I know you have some shows. I think in England next year you're doing with a full band, and you do a lot of U.S. stuff because you were, as a lot of artists were, you were even more popular in the States than back in your home country. But any new music coming out? Other touring? What's coming up in 2020 for you?
Yeah, I'm in the final stages of a new album, and this is a new album. It's a real rock record, but it's quite a mix, quite varied. A lot of R&B, but it kind of real hard rock as well. Very much like the first album, but also like Running the Endless Mile. It's got different flavors in there. That's got Kenny Jones from the Small Faces and the Faces. He plays drums on a couple of tracks. I can tell you one of the tracks is called Last Man Standing, because Kenny Jones is the last man standing from the Small Faces. He's the only living member. So to have him playing drums on this tribute to them is great.
And you could be doing more shows, or?
Yeah, we go out. We go out in March. It begins in March, and we're playing London. Then we go to Switzerland, and then to Germany, and then it's fingers crossed that we can get some promoters interested in America, and then bring it to America and do the whole States.
Yeah, I know you do some of the Rewind festivals and everything, but the problem I think with those is you could do them, you get like 2 or 3 songs, but if you get just niched in with that Rewind all the time, you don't get to do anything else except for, Naughty Naughty, Saying Almost Fired.
Exactly.
And it's
frustration.
It's got to be. I mean, it's even with the song that, it did so well. It's got to be frustrating when, you have to play 3 songs every night, the same 3 songs.
Yeah. You feel a bit like a traveling jukebox sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't do that many, but they're great to do because I meet a lot of old friends and stuff on them. But they really they ain't at the top of my list, because I'm in my head. I'm still young, vibrant. I practice all the time. I'm trying to get better. It's not about this is how I used to be. This is me. I'm as good as I am today. Forget what happened in the past. My measure is how good am I tonight,
And I still see it with that same guitar. Is that the same guitar you had back in the 80s?
Yeah, the Stars and Stripes.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one. The one right through. Even in the 70s, before I came, Dreaming of America, that was my guitar playing the English clubs,
That's amazing. That long. Things that are built today don't last that long.
No.
So
it's pretty battered.
We are on a Decades Artist Spotlight. Mr. John Parr is with us tonight. John, as always, it's fantastic having you on the show.
God bless you. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful interview. Hi, this is John Parr, and you're listening to Decades with Joey Kramer.
I wouldn't lie to you. Oh, girl, you better believe me. I'd never say goodbye to you. Oh, girl, as long as you need me. Trust me, baby, you're the only one. Trust me, don't make me the lonely one. I'm happy when I'm near to you. Yeah, it's true, can't get any better. Someone else would ever try for me. You would see I wouldn't let her. Trust me, baby, you're the only one. Trust me, don't make me the lonely one. Something happened, baby, in my life the minute I saw you. All the others faded from my life the minute I saw you. Hold me, all I wanna do is kiss your baby face. Hold me, gonna rock you in my arms till I know you're safe. till I know you're safe. Yeah. Been waiting all my life for you. Yeah, it's true. You better believe me. There ain't nothing I would hide from you. Cross my heart, you're all that I needed. Trust me, baby, you're the only one. Trust me, don't make me the lonely one. Something happened, baby, in my life the minute I saw you. All the others faded from my life the minute I saw you. Ooh, something happened, baby, in my life the minute I saw you. All the others faded from my life the minute I saw you. Hold me, hold me. All I wanna do is kiss your baby face. Hold me, hold me. Gonna rock you in my arms till I know you're safe. Till I know you're safe. Yeah. Till I know you're safe. Something happened, baby, in my life the minute I saw you. All the others faded from my life the minute I saw you. Ooh, something happened, baby, in my life the minute I saw you. All the others faded from my life the minute I saw you. I saw you. Hey, 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 hey. I saw you. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey. Something happened, baby, in my life the minute I saw you. The minute I saw you. The minute I saw you.
It is a Decades Artist Spotlight. That's the stripped-down version of the song John and I were talking about. The minute I saw you, from Three Men and a Baby.
This is the Decades Artist Spotlight with Joe E. Kramer. This week's artist.
Decades Artist Spotlight tonight. Mr. John Parr was with us. God, he's always a great guy. If you missed the interview, it'll be up on our website, decadeswithjoeekramer.com. That's middle initial E for you to check it out. Next interview we have, next Spotlight. We have a bunch coming up in the new year. Michael Sweet, Tom Kiefer, a bunch, but last one for this year will be coming up with Johnny Mathis. As usual, every Christmas he'll be back, and that'll be on December 21st during our Christmas Spectacular. You don't want to miss it. All right, next week, Singing with the Sam is back, too. I believe she's going to be coming up here singing a holiday tune as we gear up for Christmas. All right, heading to the 10 o'clock hour, we got the Sugar Hill Gang, Bon Jovi, Tom Petty, and a sort of Christmas song from the New Kids on the Block. It was released Christmas time, 1989, but sort of, kind of. Not really. You'll see. All that and more right here. It's Decades on the River, 105 and 103.5. Hang on.